It must be International Week of pulling your dick out, swinging it around, and offering it for a sword fight. I have never seen anything like it. Here are some of the people who decided to take their dicks out for said dick sword fight and prove themselves this week. We have Mark Zuckerberg, a usual suspect. We have Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Mark Cuban, Aaron Rodgers, even, as some would argue, sadly, the millionaires and billionaires who perished on the Titanic submarine trip that nobody saw coming, the phenomenon heard around the world. As I do this, it is Thursday afternoon. It's the witching hour. The dick swinging heard around the world. Billionaires is trending. And there is a reason as to why. So quickly, these three things before we hop into them even more. Unless you are literally residing on the actual Titanic, you have now heard about the Ocean Gate Titanic submarine that was just this phenomenon. The internet just became captivated by it, and the 5 passengers on board on the sub went missing this week, and searchers were against the clock to try and find them. And sadly, as I said, all 5 of them have been confirmed to have passed away as the vessel seemed to have imploded in a really dark, ironic twist of events, which I'll get to. And I'll just say the fact that this has gotten more attention than the China balloon, than UFOs, has blown my mind. The fact that this has just captivated the masses. Maybe no rhyme or reason as to why. We'll get to that in a bit. Secondly, Elon Musk challenges his fellow tech lord, okay, Mark Zuckerberg, not to a data encrypting session off, no, but to a fight in the ring, literally in Las Vegas. It is the duel of the tech nerds that, again, none of us saw coming or perhaps ever even asked for. Thirdly, another, dicks out event of the season. Joe Rogan has presidential candidate RFK Jr. on his show, and they get in the whole vaccine debate. And who chimes in but Dr. Peter Hotez? Joe Rogan comes out here and says, Dr. Pete, if you're so sure about your theories, why don't you come on and join RFK Jr. on my show for a debate, no time limit, and I will put $100,000 towards the charity of your choosing. Who hops on this? It becomes a whole thing again in the ring, all these men needing to show their dicks off to us. But like I said, the likes of Mark Cuban, Aaron Rodgers joins the chat, and even Andrew Tate, which I don't know how this is happening, because from my understanding, he was in some prison cell in the deep depths of Romania, but I digress. So first things first, the fascination and the dark, very twisted irony of the way this entire Titanic sub and the search situation has unfolded. Like I said, I couldn't get over the fact that this was just gripping. So many people were just so obsessed with this. It was everywhere. And I thought to myself, who would have thunk it? Again, more than China having like a circus, balloon on our head to spy on us. Like, this is the thing, sure enough, that people just were obsessed with this whole week. And if you don't know this information, I don't know, chances are you decided to fancy on a little submarine venture expedition yourself. First of all, people were like, who in their right mind would go aboard the submarine the size of the Scooby-Doo minivan that was held together by dental floss, basically, and controlled by a PlayStation device controller, probably that like your little brother was jerking off to and on 5 hours ago? Like, who in their right mind? So there were millionaires and billionaires, like I said, aboard. One was the Ocean Gate CEO. Not sure of his financial status, doesn't really matter. One is a British Pakistani businessman billionaire guy with his 19-year-old son, and who is, I believe, part of the richest family in Pakistan. More on that in a second. Also, a twisted series of fate is a man who was known as a great Titanic explorer. Now, I'll have you know, too, I think that this is why the whole thing is so morbid, and the details of what actually happened, people are speculating, like, because they lost communication 2 hours in. So when did the submarine implode? Did their bodies implode on the spot? Were one of them dead first from a heart attack, and there's a dead body in there in this minivan sized submarine? Just all these morbid details, right? But perhaps the most dark and twisted part, as I would say, is that the OceanGate CEO, I mean, it's not that big of a coincidence, but the fact that the OceanGate CEO's wife is a descendant of a couple who died on the Titanic and was portrayed in the movie. I don't know if you remember when the Titanic was going down in the movie, they were played, this woman's great-great-great-grandparents, what have you, were the old couple lying in the bed together to die as the Titanic was going down. So this whole thing, like life imitating art, imitating life, is so trippy and sad and twisted. You know, I've even seen memes that are like, oh, well, these people get what they paid for, you know, an immersive experience of being dead at the bottom of the ocean in the Titanic. Like, the whole thing just so dark and so bleak. But that all goes to say, the one thing from this is how this has become the punchline of the internet. People are calling it the Fire Fest of submarines. You have, you know, Cardi B weighing in. You have Candace Owens coming out of the woodwork saying pigs are flying, because I actually agree with Cardi B. Cardi B called out the stepson of one of the men on board because he was basically in a mosh pit at a Blink-182 concert to, you know, dance his troubles away as all this was going on, versus being home patiently waiting in remorse by the phone. But that's a whole other ball of wax, right? So you have all these celebrities chiming in. Meanwhile, I'm eager to see, we all know Hulu, Netflix, HBO, they are that actual meme of the black man standing next to the tree, wiping his hands together in anticipation, waiting to hop on that ass, like Spirit Halloween come October 1st, to hop on the rights to the story to make a series. Because again, for whatever reason, this has really just won the attention of the whole nation. So yes, the whole dark, twisted irony of the whole story of even venturing down to the Titanic only to die down there in the Titanic is just really just actually so sad, and something that you can't even write, right? But because of that, perhaps the most fascinating thing about all this to me is how it's become this entire thing of the little guy versus the big guy, or, you know, the eat the rich versus the poor. So I've been seeing a lot of commentary on the internet saying things like, fuck the rich, this is what they get. Because again, the passengers on this vessel, on this craft, if you will, were millionaires and billionaires paying a small little price tag of $250,000 each to go aboard on this venture. Otherwise, like, what actually ended up becoming a death wish. On the waiver, there are all these videos coming out, right? How it says on the waiver, like, death could happen, disability, post-traumatic stress, and what have you. But like the death trap and the death wish, as if, you know, the Titanic didn't foreshadow it all these years later. But like, yes, this craft was not sophisticated enough for this. But in the essence of the wagging the dick around thing, a lot of people are saying this is what happens when these millionaires and these billionaires with nothing to do with their money go on these not even cheap thrills, on these expensive thrills. They're going into space, they're going down to see the Titanic, and it's almost this like existential question of when isn't it enough? Like, nothing is enough, right? And I'm going to get to that in a second. But I find this whole like the rich versus the poor argument really fascinating, because you have people going, all this spectacle, all this search, all this attention for, you know, 5 rich people down in the sea. Meanwhile, you have, you know, dozens of refugees dying by sea every day to find, you know, salvation and to get out of their countries, and bad unemployment and inflation. And where's the attention on them, right? And that's a sad reality too, that wealth just equals power. Like, it's just the name of the game. It's the way the cookie crumbles. But I find it so fascinating too. It's like survival of the fittest, because you have the little guy arguing about the big guy against themselves. It's so fascinating. It's like split, with some people saying, how dare you? This is so insensitive of you. And then again, the others going, fuck the rich. This is exactly what they deserve. But more about what I was saying before about like the existentialism, right? Of, billionaires doing all of these things. Like, I do think that while all of us aren't billionaires by any means, okay, as I say, over a day old iced coffee that I saved in my fridge, the leftovers, no coffee to waste, bitch. But it is, I think, so telling of our society in that it's almost like nothing is enough. And the things that we will do for these like flashy, over the top Instagram moments, right? Like, again, when will it ever become enough? And a step further from that is, I would argue again that this whole debate with AI on the forefront and tech and the advancements, like sometimes I understand how I could come off as a cranky little old grandma about it and a purist or traditionalist, if you will. I'm not overlooking all of the advancements and the efficiencies and the innovations that come with technology, right? And with AI and all this. But there is a core part of me that thinks, why can't we stop trying to outdo God, right? Take that as religious or not as you want, or a higher power. Like, why do we keep having to outdo and outsmart it? When in the end, I feel like technology in a lot of ways has destroyed us. It's made kids become potatoes. They don't even know how to interact with each other. It's just all a mess, right? People are anxious, they're withdrawn, they're depressed. And so while it's odd, because while there have been all of these technological advances and people argue, we've never been more connected. You can connect with someone across the world in 5 minutes if you want. We've also never have been, again, more depressed and isolated and unable to connect and in our own little world and missing out on a human level. So when it comes to all this and seeking experiences, I just think it's time for us to stop trying to play God. And like survival of the fittest, like I said, like let natural order do its thing. As great as these technological advances are to help us, it's like it can only go so far, and as far as like its ability to help us explore and do these things. And like, again, a lot of people calling this out for what have you, but like people who have disposable money, again, taking their dicks out and doing kind of thoughtless stuff like this. This doesn't go for actual real explorers and discoverers and adventurers who have allowed us to have, these key discoveries and advancements in society and culture. Like, again, I'm talking about this throwaway money for people to do these kinds of things that they do, apparently. So I don't know if there was such fascination because it was just so absurd, like something you can't even make up, if because there also is that really sad, tragic human aspect of it. But I will say all of the details were just playing out minute by minute. Literally just before sitting down to shoot this, I learned that there was debris from the submarine found 500 meters from the Titanic, and the fact that they had confirmed all the passengers had died, right? Because the whole race was to try to find them before the emergency oxygen depleted. So this is all like minute by minute. I think why it's so fascinating too is because that these are questions that will never be answered. And it is really sad and dark, but to think what was going on in their heads. Did they know that they were going to die? And also, was it just on the spot like that? At what point did it happen? Like what actually happened to their bodies? Just the whole thing, right? Is just a mystery that will probably be left unsolved, which is why it is so fascinating and so sad. But also the fact that, in this obsession with money and all of it, rich versus poor, all these things, it's like in the end, money can't save you. It's like, right, that death and death is the ultimate equalizer. Like money can only go so far. So next up, the fact that Elon Musk did indeed challenge Mark Zuckerberg to a fight in the ring, and Mark Zuckerberg told him when and where. It's like, seriously, what is this? What is this? The game of I know you are, but what am I? Is this like PE in 5th grade? What are we actually doing here? And the whole thing is so entertaining. It almost reminds me of the Titanic thing, because it's like, it's like we have these really powerful, again, tech lord billionaires, and in the end, they need to throw a swing at each other because they don't have enough. Like, what do they have to prove, right? And the fact that both of these things, sadly, are so entertaining, it's almost like I could see why. It's like our society, because of its flashiness and shamelessness and overstimulation all the time, it's like we are numb to anything and we just want to feel something and be entertained. And it's like, who would have thought, by all things, right? But that whole thing is so hysterical to me, because it's like, seriously, these hasty white dudes. Now, don't get me wrong. People are throwing their bets in. This is becoming a whole side hustle and a whole side business. But apparently Mark Zuckerberg has brushed up on his jujitsu. So watch out to Elon Musk. But could you imagine, again, these two dudes going at it who arguably like have never a day in their life, aside from Mark Zuckerberg's jujitsu sessions, like have ever even, as if there's some of these, like these warriors, soldiers, like veterans. It's like, what have you done? What have you done? I actually need an answer. And it's, again, like, what does all of this say? It's like, you are so wealthy. You are so powerful. You could literally buy any of us out if you wanted. And it's like, again, the pure male instinct to come out here in the ring and take it outside and show us what you got. It's like, for the actual love of God. Lastly is what I had said before, right? Joe Rogan having RFK Jr. on his show. RFK Jr. says all of these controversial things about vaccines. They invite this prominent doctor on to talk about it and what have you, but all of the men getting in on this, really all the people in this who want to have a dog in this race, and on a prominent level at least, are all men. You have Mark Cuban over here calling Joe Rogan out. Then you have Aaron Rodgers calling the vaccine doctor out. Like, yeah, go on a debate. And then, like I said, you have Andrew Tate in the depths of misogyny hell, which I don't even know, coming out and saying he would throw money down, like $500,000 down into this, to whatever charity, whatever it is that Joe Rogan first initiated, for this, to see this debate go down. So again, what have you, but all of these dudes having a dog in this race and a fight in this fight. And I will say too, like, I had so many notes about this and about the whole vaccine debate and what was said and what the doctor said. And I'm just going to spare us all and not even go down that rabbit hole, because that is a conversation for another time. So I'm looking at the big picture of all of this. And I don't know about you. I mean, call me crazy, but there's one blatant, blaring thing that is missing from this whole picture. And that is that there are no women to be seen. No women on the sub. No women in the ring with Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Okay. No prominent women in this whole Joe Rogan debate controversy going down. Why is it, you may ask? There's a lot of theories. I know the obvious, and I'm going to address them. Don't worry. But my first and a lot of this today is about, like, just things like the pure instinct on a primal level, is that women aren't doing this dumb shit. I am not sorry. You have these Neanderthal men over here, again, can't help themselves but whipping their dick out every day of the week, every chance they get. And women are over here like civilized, chilling, and we're just like, what are you doing? On what planet, in whose right mind, right? Like, you do not see influential, powerful women out here being like, you know what? I'm going to take my tits out and swing them around, and we're going to get in a big old tit sword fight, and I'll show you. I've yet to prove me wrong, okay? And I will stand corrected. Here is what I feel people would argue from hearing this, understandably, right? Number one, they would say, well, Taylor, women can't act out like this. They can't be pulling all these sort of shenanigans, because women have been told that they got to stay in line. They got to stay put in their place. You know, they can't be going off the handle, or they won't be taken seriously, or they'll be, stereotyped as the angry, emotional women and all these things, right? Secondly, people could argue, what are you talking about? Women act the exact same as men. They pull all this shit. They do all this. It's just that we don't see it as much because Alas, another argument or conclusion is that there aren't as many women in power or at this high profile level. So we're just not seeing women swing their dicks around. But trust me, Taylor, if they had the opportunity to, they would. Sheryl Sandberg, lean in and pull your dick and tits out and let's swing it around. Is this all true though? Is this all true? Here's what I have to say to those arguments about my theory about why women just aren't in this picture, because they aren't to be caught doing this dumb shit for the most part. We do a generalizing moment sometimes here on Cancel Me, Baby. First things first. Yes, I will acknowledge that women are boxed in and told to act a certain way and behave a certain way, in a way that men, case in point, are not perhaps held to the same standard to, right? Because I can already hear my, feminist friends in my ear going, women are held to a different standard. They can't be acting this way. So I have a couple examples for you, right? Perhaps the most tried and true is our girl, Kim Kardashian. Now, even on an episode of The Kardashians, you have Kris Jenner talking about how, regardless of the fact that Kim and her family, but let's just focus on Kim, right, is a self-made billionaire. And she's not answering to anyone. Let's get it straight. She is the CEO. She does run her businesses that, for whatever rhyme or reason, have been so completely successful, creating Kim to be arguably one of the most famous and influential women in the world, regardless of how you feel about her, right? Whether or not she is the smartest intellectually doesn't matter. She's obviously so business savvy and has built this. And Kris even says, she's often written off as not serious, not really a businesswoman, right? Is just some naked, kind of frivolous, silly influencer. And she goes to say, nobody would argue this about men. And I have to say that is, kind of true. And I'll also attest to speaking with Kim Kardashian in a business capacity, in a business setting. I interviewed her and sat down with her one-on-one when she was promoting one of her business endeavors, a sunglasses line. I don't know if you guys remember this. I've told you the story, but she was on marketing, messaging, branding, online the entire time. The whole publicity team it was not to get personal. It was like not to get silly. It was business. The whole publicity team was like, we will literally kill you and everyone that if you so much as mention Kanye. This is when they were married at the time. So needless to say, all of that shit was in-step marketing 101 on message. But there is something to be said, right? If dudes would be challenged the same way, like their legitimacy or their business savvy. Case in point, I've tried to do it. I've tried to do it myself. Even people like Logan and Jake Paul. I have often said, make it make sense. I don't understand it. Talk about frivolous and silly. I'm like, these guys are doing a bunch of cheap thrills and are millionaires. But again, even though if they started off, right, and same thing, they may be business savvy, marketing savvy like Kim Kardashian, but no one questions them, or again, their business savvy or their legitimacy the same way, even though your girl here has tried, but thus they continue on and live on, right? But it's that sort of idea that men just aren't even challenged the same way. So another example that I love is Sanna Marin, who was Finland's youngest ever female prime minister. There's actually a great special I started watching. I believe it's on HBO, and it's called The First Five, and it's all about her and the women surrounding her when she was prime minister. But don't know if you remember, less than a year ago, there was videos of her, having harmless fun at a party. She's singing. She's dancing. She may as well be the poster child for Kids Bop. Nothing salacious. And people took such offense to it. They thought that they had her do a drug test, right? As if she was literally doing like Jello shots off somebody's tits. Like, absolutely absurd. And it's like, seriously? Like, you guys are going this hard on her for doing like a wannabe like TikTok routine in a camera with some of her friends at a party? Are you serious? And so again, it's like, right. So men can do all of this cockamamie shit and be fine. And, a woman is singing along to a song, karaoke style, if you will, pick a song, any innocent song of your choice. And she's scrutinized to this degree, has the country of Finland so divided over her behavior. And if we're going to go down that path, like, okay, talking about swinging their dicks out. What about all the millionaire, billionaire, powerful, influential men who were chilling on Epstein's island on his jets? Like, can I hear a little bit more about that? Meanwhile, this girl can't even, make a lip syncing video in peace. I'm just saying. Secondly, the point about not as many women being in powerful positions, A, and B, visibly out there for the public to see their actions. I will agree with that. Yes, of course, there aren't as many women in these powerful position of influence, but I would beg to differ that women, even in those positions, would not act the same as men. And here's why. It's kind of like a through line of this whole thing. Men and women are different, and that is okay. For the most part, men and women are very much competitive, but they're competitive in different ways. As proven, men are like, let's take it outside, bro, and need to show off their biceps and their dicks and beat someone up to make a point about something, right? Or show off in that way, in a physical way, right? Whereas women, we tend to be, I'm not talking always, of course, and I'm not talking about like MMA fighters or WWE fighters or all these people who physically will kick your ass in competition, right? Or in athleticism, but I'm talking about, again, the pure female drive to compete with calculation, verbally, with mind games. Like, we will destroy your ass. I mean, even think about the housewives. Like, when you think of women acting up and acting out, I immediately think of the housewives. And it's like, right, half the time the drama is so enticing because they're like yelling at each other. Now, every now and then there will be a tug of the weave, a flip of the table, but for the most part, it's stories around and storylines around them saying something, thinking something that becomes stories in and of themselves, so much though that you're like, I forgot how this even started, right? That's how crazy that it becomes. That's why a dude housewife show would never work, because the guys would be sitting around with their hands in their pants ordering Papa John's and trying to rescue that PlayStation controller for the love of God so they can get back to their lives like Neanderthals. No, I'm joking, but you know what I mean, right? It just would not carry the same, just not be entertaining in the same way. So with all of this being said, it does make me wonder, and I've posed this question on the show before, but is there something that women can learn from men when it comes to being powerful, aside from taking their dicks out and or tits out and swinging them around? That's not what I mean. But I mean in terms of what can we learn from them, right? From these guys being in these high, big, important, powerful, influential positions. Yes, there is the facet that in our society thus far, women have had to work harder and haven't been given those opportunities, and we're playing a little bit of catch up, if you know what I mean. Men have more easily been able to excel and naturally get in those positions, right? So women were making up for lost time. But with that aside, right, being a little more aggressive, being a little more forthright, women are like shitting themselves at the thought of asking for a raise, where again, men come in, take their chest hair out and just ask without blinking, right? So is there something that we can actually take from all of this and learn from this and have a little, another little trick up our sleeve? Because the truth is, and men, I love ya, but they ain't gonna learn from us, because their go-to tactic is gonna take the dick and perhaps the balls out and swing them around. And that's how they're gonna fight and show their dominance, right? And win this race. And the fact is, we have such a package and a primal thing that they can't replicate or duplicate. And truth is, let's be real, that they're probably not gonna bother to or want to, even parts of it mentally or verbally, like I said, learn from us. Forget the whole power that we have physically too, right? That entire package, like I said, that they just can't have the entirety of it all. While you may be getting your popcorn out to watch the biggest embarrassment joke of the year with our two tech lords going at it in the ring in Sin City, perhaps, think to yourselves too, in all seriousness, something to think about. Is there a little something that I can take from this and hone in on my own power to, one up them in their own game, whether that be in or out of the ring, if you know what I mean?